You're brand new to the Remo platform, you want to host your virtual event, let's talk about how you set it up. I'm Seth Resler, I'm the founder of Community Marketing Revolution, and I have a free quick start guide to using Remo that you can download. I've put the link in the description of this video. You can get that for free. Now, let's talk about how to set up your first event. So first, let me share my screen so that we can take a look at the Remo backend. Okay, I have logged into my Remo account, and now I am going to click on this blue Create Event button here, and that's going to take me to this screen where I can start filling in the details for my Remo event. Starting with, do I want this to be a public event or a private event? Now, most of the time, I make all of my events public. Here's what the difference is. With a public event, anybody who's got the link can enter the event. They are going to have to register with their email address. So their email address will be put into the back end when they do. But as long as they've got that link, they can get into the event. With a private event, what happens is they've got to register and their email address has to be in the event ahead of time. And then when they try to log into the event, the system will check the email address that they are logging in with to make sure that it is already on the list. Now, the only reason I would ever make an event private is if there were some overarching concern about either security or safety or privacy that were really important. For the most part, I make my events public. And the reason why is because often what happens is that when people register, they use one email address and then they'll come back and they'll try and log into the event and they'll forget and they'll use a different email address to try and log into that event, and they won't be able to get in, and then you'll get emails saying, hey, I can't get into the event, and so on and so forth. And so it's easiest to just avoid that issue by setting your event to public and not worrying about it. So unless you've got a really important reason for doing so, I would just set your event to public. Then, of course, we've got to name the event. I'll go ahead and give this one a name. We'll call it Test 1. And we've got to set the time. I'll go ahead and set this in the future. Sure, that's fine. And that end time, it works fine. We can add an image as well. Note that the image should be 780 pixels wide by 490 pixels tall. You can create that using Photoshop or Canva or something. For now, I'm just going to use the default image. Now it's time to select a floor plan. And we're going to use one of the default floor plans that comes with Remo, but you can either purchase a custom floor plan or hire a designer to create one and then upload it into the system if you want. But we're not going to worry about that. So I'm going to go ahead and scroll down here, and they're organized into a couple of categories. There are the realistic events, and we can hover over one and preview it. And it will show us what that looks like. These realistic floor plans are really kind of neat. They do take people a minute longer to figure out what's going on when they see them. We can either select or cancel it, but let's actually look at some of the isometric floor plans. If you're familiar with the old video game Q*bert, that's what these look like. You know, we can see the isometric floor plans. We can go in and select a modern floor plan. For example, here's one that I'll use. This is called the awards show. And as you're choosing a floor plan, the things that you want to pay attention to are how many seats are in the floor plan overall. Now, you can, of course, if you have more people coming to your event than there are seats on the floor plan, it'll just add more floors. But be thinking about that, especially if you're hosting a small event. If you've only got 20 or 30 people coming to your event, you don't want a floor plan that has 60 seats because it's going to look like a lot of empty seats. So be thinking about that, but also be thinking about how many seats are at each table. And some of these floor plans have the same number of seats at each table. Some of them have a variety, anywhere from 2 to 8 seats at the floor plan. And that really depends on your need. So for example, if you're hosting a networking event where there's a lot of one-on-one conversations that are happening, you might want to choose a floor plan that has a lot of 2-seat tables. On the other hand, if your goal is to have a lot of group discussions, you may want to have a lot of tables with 8 seats. I personally really like 6-seat tables. It seems to be the magic number in terms of having a great discussion. So that's usually what I look for. But really, it's a judgment call and it's up to you. Go ahead and cancel this. And there's classic in here as well. I tend to not like the colors of the classic tables as much, but we can take a quick look at some of them. So things like that. So choose the one that you want. I'm just going to go ahead and go with, there's a nice outdoor floor plan here that I like somewhere. Let's see where it is. Here it is. This is the poolside floor plan. We'll go ahead and select that. Okay. And at that point, You can go ahead and save and publish your event if you want. It will ask you some things that Remo just wants to know in terms of collecting data. What are you trying to do with your event? I'm usually trying to generate more leads, and you can select the type of event that you want. I don't know, we'll call this a networking meeting, and save and publish that. So there it is, and now I can grab a link to my event and I can share it. So if you want to start using that to set up email campaigns or anything else that you might be doing with your event, now you can grab that link. You have done enough. And in fact, we can actually enter the event ahead of time and set some things up, but we're not going to do that yet. I'm going to close this, and sure enough, here's my test one event. I'm going to go ahead and click on that pencil icon. So here I am. I'm back in the back end of my event. And now let's go through these other settings up here on the left. We've already done the basic settings. I'm not going to go through ticketing in this video. I've got another video that's dedicated to that. Just know that the very first time you want to set up ticketing, you actually need to submit a request to Remo, and you need to set up Remo on your Stripe account with a developer account. You need to link that account. So there's a form there that will help you do that. Then let's go to invitations. There are two different invitation lists. There are speakers and there are guests. And the difference is that when you're in presentation mode in Remo, a speaker can get on stage so that they can be seen by everybody else by turning their mic and their camera on. A guest cannot. A guest is in the audience. They can only watch the presentation that's happening. So you can add your speakers ahead of time by typing in their email address and then clicking the Add to Speakers List button. Now, if for any reason you forget to add a speaker ahead of time, don't worry. You can promote a guest at your event to speakers so that they can come on stage. You can invite them to come up on stage, even if you forget to put their email address here ahead of time. So don't worry about that. Down below, we see invite your guests. This is where you put the email addresses of your guests or where they will appear if they fill out the registration form for your event. You can decide whether you want to send the event reminder emails that Remo generates to your guests. For the most part, you're probably going to want to do this unless you're like me. I personally like to create my own custom emails and send them out using another piece of software and then integrate the two. But if you're just starting, go ahead and use those guest reminder emails. You can either type in the email addresses of your guests manually, you can import them from a CSV file, or we can set up the registration form and you can share the registration page with people and have them register there. And then you can send event invitation emails to folks when you import them if you want. Let's click next, and we'll go to the registration form. And Remo allows you to add questions to the registration form. And as you can see, people have a couple of different options when it comes to adding the type of question that they want. They can add a single line of text, a paragraph of text. You can create a list where they select one choice from that list, or you can create a list where they select multiple choices from those lists. So that's really up to you. Let's just go ahead and add a single line of text, and we'll say, I don't know, company name here. And we can make it required or not when people fill that out. And there's the question here. And once you've got multiple questions, you can go back in and edit them by clicking that pencil icon, or you can move them up and down just by dragging and dropping here. You can create up to 5 custom questions that you can use on your registration form. Now, there is a guest lobby. So what happens with a lobby is either you can turn the lobby off, which means when people first enter your event, they're going to go right to the floor plan and be seated at a table. Or you can put them in a lobby, and that allows you as the host to let them in either individually or let them in all at once. It's kind of like a waiting room. So it's up to you whether you want to use that or not. Sometimes I use it, sometimes I don't. It just depends on the event. You can put a message that people will see when they're in the lobby. That's up to you. The welcome message I think is really important and I really like, so I always click show welcome message. And here is where you can put some information that just tells people what they're going to experience when they come into the Remo event. I like to give them some very basic instructions, just telling them, here's what's going to happen. You're going to go in, you're going to see a floor plan of a ballroom, you're going to be seated at one of the tables, and you will be video conference with everybody else at that table. You can move to another table at any time just by double clicking on another table. Something really simple like that. So that's basically what we say here. You know, it's up to you whether you want to use this or not. The other thing that I like to use even more than the welcome message is I like to include a video. You can include an image or a video to go along with your welcome message. But like I said, I like to include a video. I guess I've got one here that I've used in the past. But I record basically a 60-second video that says, hey, how you doing? Welcome, and says all that stuff I just said to you a minute ago. So those are your options there. Let's talk about floor content. And what floor content allows you to do is to add some images or some websites or some logos, things like that, to your floor plan so that all of your guests will see them. This is fantastic when you are including sponsors in your event. If you want to include their logo there or a pop-up window or things like that, you can even embed websites in here. So for example, if you want people to make a donation or make a purchase or take a survey, you can do that using the floor plan and by embedding that content. I've got another video that goes through this in detail, so I'm not going to go through it here. It's probably something that you're not going to need for your first event, but if you do, check out that video. Let's take a look at feature toggles. There are a lot of different features that Remo offers, and you can turn them on or off individually for your event here at the features toggles section. Now, I like to turn a lot of things that I don't need off because when people come to my event, I want them focused on interacting with other people who are at the event. I don't want them playing with all the technology and the tools and the gadgets and things like that. So unless you're actually going to use a feature in your event, I recommend that you turn it off here. Here are the settings that I usually use. Show screen share. This means that your guests can actually share their screen with each other while they're in conversation mode. If you want to allow them to do that, you can turn that on or off. I don't really care one way or the other, but usually I might turn that off. Audience view means that when you are in presentation mode and everybody's mic and camera is turned off except for the folks who are on stage presenting, do you want little icons at the bottom of the screen that show you all of the people that are in the audience? I use this, I turn this on when I think there's going to be a big audience because I want people to know that there's a big audience there. If I'm expecting a small audience, I usually turn it off because I don't want people to know that there's a small audience there. So that's up to you. The Remoji reactions. And this is, they call it Remoji because it's a play on emoji. But in the bottom right corner of the screen, when you are in presentation mode, people have the options of clicking a thumbs up symbol. They can click an applaud symbol. And there's a dude in a monocle. I don't really know what the dude in the monocle is about, but he's there as well. So do you want people to basically be able to click an emoji, and when they do, that emoji will float up to the top of the screen? I like this because it's a great thing to do when you first enter presentation mode to get a reaction from the audience and to get them engaged and say, hey, everybody, if you can hear me, give me a thumbs up. And you see all these thumbs up floating up. So I do like to use that. Q&A is great. It allows you to separate questions from the general chat that's happening during the presentation. I usually turn that on. The chat, I think, is really important for interaction. Whiteboard, I don't usually use. In fact, you can see here that I've actually disabled it at the company level, not at the event level, because I usually turn it off. But if you need a whiteboard, you can turn that on for your event. Polls as well. If you want to have polls during your presentation, you can create them and show them here, or you can turn that tab off. The next feature is allow guests to lock tables. What this does is allows guests to lock a table so that nobody else can join. And this is useful if your guests might want to have private conversations. For example, if two people might want to peel off and have a one-on-one conversation and make sure that that conversation is private, that nobody else can join them, then you might want to turn this feature on so that your guests can have those private conversations. But if the primary goal of your event is networking, then you might want to turn this off so that guests can't actually prevent other people from joining their tables. Show the guest experience survey. This is a survey that happens midway through the event that allows guests to offer some feedback. I don't usually use this. If I'm going to do a survey, I'll do it on my own after the event. Display the user ID on the profile card. When your guests are in the event, they can click in the upper right-hand corner and they can fill out a profile. They can add things like their website or their LinkedIn profile or various other things, including their image, their headshot. And the question is, do you want their user ID to display on that profile? I don't usually care. That's usually not an important piece of information, so I just leave that off. Finally, overflow seating. And this is an important one that I like to turn on. Basically, what overflow seating means is that there's more seats at the table than it looks like there are if you're just looking at the floor plan. So if you have a floor plan and there's a table with 6 seats in there and you have overflow seating turned on, that means that there's actually 50% more seats at that table. There's actually 9 seats at that table, even though it looks like there are only 6. And this is a useful feature because it prevents people from getting blocked out of a table. What often happens, especially at the end of events, is that people start to filter out. And so you get to the point where you're at the end of the event and there's maybe only, 7 or 8 people left, and the table only has 6 seats. Well, if overflow seating is turned off, then those extra 1 or 2 people are just shut out. They can't be part of the conversation. If it's turned on, then even though it looks like there's only 6 seats at that table, they can actually still join that table because there's really 9 seats at that table. So I like to turn this on just so that people don't get too caught up about how many seats are at the table. Next, let's click on Event Agenda. And this is not something that you need to have for your event by any stretch, especially if you're doing a short event and there isn't a lot happening. I would just skip this. But if you are doing a longer event where you have multiple speakers or lots of different sessions throughout the course of the event, then you might want to create an agenda so that people can look ahead and see what else is coming up. And essentially what this does is it creates an agenda that your guests can then click on and see what's going to be happening during the course of the event. So let's just quickly create a couple of items. We'll add a new item. We'll call the first one networking. Ensure that'll last for 30 minutes. We'll let it be blue, and we could add a description if we wanted. And then we'll add another item. We'll call it the presentation. And again, it'll be 30 minutes, but let's actually change the color so that it looks different. And then we can add more networking afterwards. And so on and so forth. So that's how you create an agenda. Let's go ahead and talk about assigning tables. And here's what assigning tables means. Normally, if people are unassigned, when they first enter the event, they are randomly placed at a table. If you want to make sure that when your guests enter the event, they are placed at specific tables, then you can assign them to those tables. And I'll give you an example of where I use this. I often host speed networking events with students and potential employers. And so what we do is we name each of the tables after those employers, and then I assign the representatives from those businesses to their tables. I don't assign the students because we want the students to move freely from table to table to table, but we want the employers to all be at the correct table. So that's why you might want to assign them. So let's go ahead and take a look at what this looks like. I can only assign one person right now because I am the only person registered for this event, but basically all the email addresses will be here, and you just drag and drop that to the place that you want to be. You can filter this list by entering, their email address or name, and then it will show you just those people. So if you have a lot of guests that are coming to your event that are registered, you can find the ones that you want to assign quickly, and you can unassign them too. If you want to just unassign all of your attendees, you can click this button up here. I will give you a warning that once you assign your attendees to a table, there are certain things, certain changes that you can't make in the Remo backend, such as floor plans and things like that. So usually this is one of the last things you will want to do before your event. I usually do it either the day before my event or a few hours ahead of time. I don't do it right at the outset. So that's assigning tables. Streaming is if you want to take the presentation that is happening at your event and stream it out to different destinations such as YouTube. I don't usually like to do this because I want people to actually be at my event if they're going to see the presentation. I don't want them to be able to see it on social media or in other places, but maybe you have some reason why you might want to stream your presentation out to different destinations, so you could do that here. And then finally, there are a number of post-event options, including analytics or exporting your guest lists or your poll answers or the questions that were asked. None of this comes into play until after your event is over, but that is here as well. So once you've gone through all of that, go ahead and click Save and Close. And one other thing you might want to do to set your event up is you might want to enter the actual event. So we're going to click on these 3 dots here, and we're going to click Enter Event. And we can enter the event ahead of time. None of the guests can, even if they're registered. You can assign people to be event assistants, and they can enter your event ahead of time, but your regular guests won't. So I can actually come in here. And the reason why I might want to come in here is because quite often I will name the tables. So you hover over a table and you will see these 3 dots here, and we click on that and we can go to table settings, and I can name this anything. I might want to name it for a topic of discussion that people will talk about when they're here. I might want to name it for a certain particular group of people that are going to be here. For example, this is the engineers table, or this is the podcasters table, or whatever it happens to be. So we're just going to give this a fake name, and I can go ahead and submit it, and you can see the name changes to fake here. You're also going to want to take a look if you have added any of that floor plan content, you know, those sponsor logos or other things. Make sure that they look right and that you're happy with how it looks. So that's all you need to do in order to set your event up. In fact, a lot of that you don't even need to do. I walked through all the details, but there it is. Enjoy your first event on Remo, do a test run, and have fun with it. I'm Seth Resler from Community Marketing Revolution. Like I said, I've got that Remo Quick Start Guide that you can download for free. I put that link in the description to this video. And if you want to learn more about how to host great virtual events on Remo or any other platform, I recommend that you check out this video right here. Thanks for watching.